Hello, everyone. It's nice to see so many of you today. So without further ado, my name is Martyna. I currently work at POLLEN VC as Senior Marketing Manager. I have 4 years of experience working in game dev industry, and during this time I worked with over 30 games, mostly mobile, but some of them were also PC and consoles. I recently worked on the launch of Workshop Simulator at Intermarum. Let the party start. I studied cognitive science, and my guilty pleasure in my free time is learning how playing games can affect human brain and our cognitive functions. Okay, let's talk a bit about brains. I'm not going to teach you any neuroanatomical details, but there are 2 parts of the brain that will appear several times in this speech. So first one is this red spinning one. It's called hippocampus. It's inside the brain, and it's responsible for short-term, long-term, and spatial memory. The second one, and much more harder to pronounce, is dorsolateral prefrontal cortex, which is DLPFC for short. And it's associated with working memory, cognitive flexibility, planning, inhibition, and abstract reasoning. Human memory is not perfect. I think we can all agree with that. So before new information will code itself in long-term memory, it goes to working memory. Without repeating this very information a few times in different time periods, it's going to be forgotten. So to remember new information, we have to repeat it a few times, or it has to be connected to very strong emotions. There is plenty of research about how playing games can affect human brain. I'll share some of them with you today. I won't, however, be talking about video games addiction or gaming disorder. WHO classified this disorder in the 11th version of International Classification of Diseases, known as ICD-11. And the main criterion for diagnosis is lack of self-control over gaming. But I'm not a doctor, so I won't be talking about diseases or disorders. I'm going to focus on the research on how playing games can affect human brain in a positive way. So the first research about how playing games affects human brain was done in 1987. It was 35 years ago. And researchers were checking how playing Pac-Man and Donkey Kong, which were very popular back in the day, for 2 hours a week will affect reaction time in elderly people. So they found out that training with the use of video games significantly improved the reaction time in 60-year-olds. And I think we can all assume that this research started the trend of investigating how playing games can actually affect brain functions and neuroscientific research with the use of games. Researchers also checked the effects of playing Super Mario 3D for 1 month in a group of 60 to 80 years old. They split participants in 3 groups. First group played Super Mario 3D. The second group played Angry Birds, and the third group played Solitaire. So after a 1 month, memory was checked again, and as you can see on the graph, each group had improved hippocampal associated memory, but the best results got the Super Mario 3D participants. Whereas Solitaire was like very little improvement, but still plus. So for the next Grandmother and Grandfather Day, you can get your grandparents' Nintendo Switch with Super Mario 3D. Or you can get yourself Nintendo Switch with Super Mario 64. Because in a different research, neuroscientists scanned brains of a group of people that were trained for 2 months for at least 30 minutes per day with playing just Super Mario 64, which is a platformer game. They found a significant gray matter increase in the hippocampus, right, the LPFC, and cerebellum, and those regions in our brains are responsible for spatial recognition, for navigation, strategic planning, working memory, and motor performance. Researchers stated that this type of brain training with use of video games could therefore be used to counteract known risk of mental diseases, for example, post-traumatic stress disorder, schizophrenia, or even neurodegenerative diseases. Those are very hard names to pronounce. Okay, can you become more intelligent by playing League of Legends? I don't know if that's visible enough, but that's League of Legends arena. Because if the games are so beneficial to our cognitive skills, can they also improve our intelligence? Research done in 2017 at the University of York showed that the higher rank in League of Legends, the higher IQ score. Does anyone want to guess why? Okay. I'm going to tell you the secret. First, I encourage you to watch the TEDx talk about this, by Alex Wade, who was the professor behind those researches. And he explains there the whole procedure. But in short words, League of Legends was compared to a game of chess, where you have to predict the next moves of your opponent. So in League of Legends, we have tons of characters with unique abilities. So players that have high ranks, you have to know those abilities, analyze the situations, and predict opponents' actions. So that's similarly to a chess match. So it won't be surprised if I tell you that exer games, which are the games with the use of controller like Wii or Kinect, in general improve our bodies and our mind. So it's a great tool to convince everyone to move and exercise, especially in COVID times. And a study was done in a retirement home where a group of residents played Wii Fit for 30 minutes a day. And it showed that after a few weeks of training, it improved the balance confidence, mobility. The seniors reported lower back pain, discomfort, were less depressed, and overall improved their quality of everyday life. What about stress before an operation? So other studies were done with the use of games. There were 3 groups of patients, of children, that were prepared for an operation. All children in every group had their parents next to them. And the first group also played video games or on portable devices. And the third group got tranquilizer medication called midazolam. So there was a statistically significant increase in anxiety in group 1 and 3 at induction of anesthesia before the operation, but not in the group that played video games. So 63% of patients in video games group had no change or even decrease in anxiety level after playing games, compared with the 26% in the midazolam group and 28% in parents presence only group. So does that mean that playing games work better than medication? I wouldn't make such an assumption yet, but I think it's worth further researching. And I also want to mention here about a foundation called Starlight, as you can see on this picture. That's from their website. And they provide gaming console to young patients in children's hospitals. So Starlight Gaming delivers happiness to ill children. They design, together with Nintendo, they design special consoles that are movable, and they can be easily cleaned and follow the safety protocols, and are all over the hospital. Remember that? As I mentioned earlier, without repeating information, it's going to be easily forgotten. This scheme here is very important while designing UI and UX. And I'm sure all of you noticed that in most games, icons look familiar. So if you see a medical kit or a heart icon in the game, you know it will heal your character. If you want to fight, you will choose the sword icon or clenched fist. And lightning usually means energy. So there's a reason why those icons repeat in multiple games. For a player, it's much easier to associate symbols that he or she once saw in another game to learn new schemes. So the brain receives the icon of a medical kit, for example, as something familiar, and it goes straight to long-term memory. So this scheme is also working when we use keyboard or pad buttons, because everyone knows that if we will push the spacebar, it's in 99% cases a jump. And that's how the forgetting curve looks like when we are learning new things. I don't know if that's visible, but the gray lines here, those are predictions of what would happen if new functions wouldn't be reminded. So on average, after 3 days, 60% of players would forget feature that you would like to show them in your tutorial. But if we will remind them about this feature, the memory will stay on 90 to 80%. So how can we make our players remember all needed things? Just by reminding them. So research from 2015 says that human attention span lasts 8.25 seconds. So that means it's much harder to catch attention of customers, of your potential players, and users. So some companies are very creative with their ads because they know that the first 8 seconds are crucial if the user will watch the advertisement till the end, or if they will just scroll and forget about your messaging. And I'm sure all of you have heard about multitasking. And I hate to break it to you, but it's a myth. Our brains can't do more than one thing at once. So it's not multitasking, so making few things at once. It's more of a switching the attention from one task to another very quickly. We can make few things at once, of course, but we have to pay a price for it. Because research shows that the result of context switching costs as much of 30% of someone's productive time. So keep that in mind next time you will be designing new quests or marketing assets for your game. I have few pro tips how you can steer your players' attention when they are playing your game or when they are learning something new in the tutorial. So the first one is to avoid showing hints and clues from tutorial that are crucial in the further game, while players are focused on something else. So, for example, when players are attacked by enemies and they are fighting for their lives, don't show tutorial hints because they will never remember them. Avoid showing important tutorial info when at the same time a player is engaged with a discussion with NPC. So unless the NPC is saying exactly the same what is written in the tutorial, that's fine. But when there are two different messagings on one screen, it's gonna confuse your player. Avoid relying on only one sensory modality to tell the important information. Try to use at least two dimensions, for example, visual hint together with sound. Is that gonna load or not? That is, and there should be a sound here. Should I go back? There's no sound. Okay, but I guess you know what I mean. Because, oh. There was a sound to it. So like here, it's an example from Metal Gear Solid by Konami, and I bet a lot of you recognize this sound. Together with a red exclamation point, it's a visual, which is a visual stimuli, and it appears whenever enemy will see you in the game. So adding sound to a visual stimuli doubles the attention and triggers the conditioned reaction, the fight or flight reaction. So in game design, you can use this type of reaction triggering to warn your players about some danger, like here, or to reward them with a pleasant sound whenever they will complete the quest or find a treasure. Okay, if players must read the important information that is crucial to gameplay, force them to click OK or any other confirmation button to make sure they actually read it. Avoid adding too much information to UI. This one is particularly challenging for mobile games because the user interface has to be designed for much smaller display than for PC and console games. But if you will show too much information to your players, it can confuse and distract them from important parts of the gameplay. So the perfect solution for that is to have an active or diegetic UI, which changes during the game and depends on which actions or informations are needed and useful for the player at a particular moment. Use yellow and red color when you want to draw someone's attention. So based on research done in 2015, red and yellow are the ones that will draw the most attention of users. Those are also colors that will make you and your players remember things that you want to stress out. And that's why I'm using them in my presentation. So colors matter. I know it's hard to believe, but it's been scientifically proven. So, for example, there was a research in which top 10 players played over 1,300 matches as a red or blue team in the VR arena. So it turns out the red teams were winning 54.9% of matches. So was that a coincidence? Not really, because in the Olympics of 2004, athletes wearing red suits were more likely to win against their opponents. So as we can observe in the animal kingdom, red color is associated with high level of testosterone, dominance, anger, because even our face turns red when we are angry because of the high blood flow, and adrenaline. So since artificial stimuli like red suit or red arena color can enhance inner natural stimuli like better performance, it's actually worth using this knowledge in your game design. So besides red, which has very interesting impact on humans, other colors can steer our behavior as well. We need to remember that there are cultural and personal differences and preferences, but some of them are universal. So as I mentioned before, yellow and red are warning colors. They grab our attention. So there is a bigger chance if something is red or yellow, it will be spotted by our side. So in game, that's the screenshot from It Takes Two by Electronic Arts. The main characters are wearing yellow and red shirts. This is a co-op game, so you see both of those characters at the same time on one screen. So those colors are not only visible to players, but they are easy to distinguish from each other, especially when players must cooperate on one arena. And what about the marketing assets? So the colors can also be used to grab attention of our users or potential players. And in the middle, you can see the classic wheel of colors. And as you probably noticed, arrows point to complementary colors. So when you want to grab attention, it's good to try to use the opposite colors from each other, like on those Coin Masters examples. So red sign and the yellow call to action button, or blue sign and yellow CTA can actually draw our users' attention. And I strongly encourage you to test a lot of different CTAs, because there's no one and perfect solution for that. You just have to see what's gonna work the best for your game. Jesus, it vibrates every time. But now it's the time for questions, if you have some.
Thank you. Thanks for the great talk. I got one question regarding people learning new skills while playing video games. I have a friend who plays a lot of League of Legends, and he was playing in international team, so they were speaking English, and he basically learned English fluently from like really basic level while playing. He's communicating English as good as Polish because he had to during these raids in League of Legends. Do you know any studies about that?
So in general, if we learn new things, like any new things, our gray matter in our brain will also increase. So it also depends on our age. But if you're younger, you're much more open, and your neuroplasticity is still very plastic. So that's actually very possible when you're learning new things and repeating them. And you said that your friend played a lot of League of Legends, so he had to communicate a lot. And yeah, that's absolutely possible for him to learn such great new skill.
Okay, thank you.
Other questions?
Hi, my name is Josh. Thank you for the presentation. Nowadays, a lot of UIs offer dark colors or dark theme. Does dark theme have an impact on conversion towards engagement, towards sale, or towards installs?
So there is hook to that question, because we don't know if the user, for example, if they have their smartphone, if they are using the dark mode or the white mode. So you can't really control that. So if you see bigger conversion for creatives that are darker or lighter, I think it's worth testing them, because you can never distinguish if it was your dark creative which made them download something, or was it just being very well looking on the dark mode of somebody's phone.
Other questions? Hi, so you mentioned a study that said that certain games increase the memory and gray matter more than others, that Super Mario increases more than Solitaire and stuff like that. Did the study mention any like specific features that would contribute more to the memory growth?
Yeah, so they stated that it was the 3D view of the game that actually made the navigation and the gray matter increase more than other views like Solitaire, for example, because it's just flat.
Okay. Do you know any studies that are about VR games for increase of like memory or anything like that?
On purpose, I didn't add any VR games there because the most of the research that are connected to the brain activity are actually the VR games because they have the biggest impact. For example, for our site or our location, like feeling of location.
Yeah, but I think we usually talk about VR games in terms of like coordination and basically bodily movement. But I was thinking because like for older people, for example, for my parents, it is way easier to grab a Oculus Quest and just wave your hands around than grab a controller and play something, because it's like using a controller. It's basically a barrier that they can't overcome. So I was wondering if there are any games that could be recommended for older people that are like VR.
I don't know about games. I know there are specific programs that are made, for example, to enhance your modality of your hands or something. It depends on what's the problem. So they will give you the program that is meant for VR to train specific things.
Sure.
Hi, thank you for presentation. Do you think that there is a space on the market for dedicated games for that purpose? So generally games for older people that increase the, I don't know, memory or concentration, or games for kids to improve their ability to, I don't know, focus, for example?
There already are games that do that. And for example, Neurodio, this is a Polish company, they've done a game named Numbala, and this is a game that is specifically for children that have problems with counting with numbers. So there are already those games. Of course, your niche will gonna be smaller than general audience, but I think it's worth exploring.
Any idea if there is also space for certification? Because you can say that, okay, my games will improve, I don't know, the way how you are remembering things or learning colors, yeah? But it will be good to certify those games that really those improvements are
You have
visible.
to have scientific proof that they actually work. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
More questions?
Hi, my name is Luke from Creepyjar. Thank you for your presentation. I got a question about balance between positive and negative aspects of video games, because you said you're not a doctor, you you don't want to focus on this, but I have to ask the question. Recently, I watched a few materials of Dr. Andrew Huberman about what's happening in brain during some activities like video games. And it came out that there is extremely high dopamine throw up during playing video games. So when it comes to frequency of playing, it's okay when you talk about a hospital when the kids are going to play, for example, once or twice. But I see with my kids, for example, then there is something like correlation between playing games, taking drugs, because brain is stimulated, and after some time there is a loss of paying attention to other things.
Yeah, and it's just the usual scheme of being addicted to something. So as I mentioned, there is a disease and it's classified as a game addiction, and it's just like you have to treat it because that's a disease. But that's like with any other addiction. It's not the matter of what, it's the matter of the frequency and time you spend on it. But when it comes to attention, there was a very fun research about people were playing Tetris, and some certain scents were diffused during their play. So the further they got, like the higher level of Tetris they got, and they had to pay more and more attention, and they reported to smell less and less because their attention was focused on playing games and not to scent anything around them.
Yes, and are there any more like resources that show up how players become I don't know how to describe it, involved into virtual reality than to real life? Are there any studies on what's the safe balance?
Of course there are, but as I mentioned earlier, I am not an expert here. There are tons of research about this. So I'm sure you'll find some information about, when is the sweet spot of having a healthy gaming and unhealthy one.
Okay, and one more question. Do you have any knowledge about which games are safer, casual or hardcore or fabular or mobiles?
No, it's just human preferences. It's like,
Okay.
I like some games in particular genre, so I will spend more time in that. And for example, I don't really like shooters, so I won't get addicted to them because I won't spend time on them. So it's personal preference.
Okay, thanks.
Hello, thank you for presentation. I have a question because we are talking about the color approach, how we are going to use them, but what is the marketing approach for example, for the colorblind person who cannot see, how we can like attract their attention without using colors?
So you can drag them by giving very attractive, even for blind people, creatives. And I would strongly advise to use videos or GIFs instead of static images, because it's going to draw their attention very quickly.
Thank you. Actually.
Other questions?
Thanks. I have a question about, there is increasing talks about looting and gambling in games now, especially for children. I just wanted to ask, do you know any specific things that have been done already in the scientific world, or because I know that the governments are trying now to step up in the gaming industry as well to stop those practices. What do you think about that?
They work very similar, like addictive substances. So whenever someone opens a loot box, and we can see an increase in the dopamine in their blood. So that is also like connected to the addiction and not to gaming itself. If it's a part of game and it appears once for, I don't know, a few hours, I would say that's safe. But if you have unlimited, or you can buy unlimited amount of loot boxes and just, click and click and click, and that's just this dopamine 1, 2, 3. It just works like an addictive substance.
Other questions or not? Okay. If we don't have questions, thank you very much,
Thank
Martyna,
you
for your presentation.